Hey, welcome back to Bob's Two-Car Garage. Now, usually when you need a big wide piece of wood, you're going to use plywood because plywood is more stable and it's going to give you less problems. However, it's really cool sometimes to have a solid wood top, nice and wide. So I'm going to show you right now what I think is the best way to glue up a nice wide piece of wood out of solid pieces of wood. Hi, my name is Bob and I love my two-car garage. Now, this is some really nice wood that we found down in San Juan Capistrano that came off of an old water tower. So we're going to make a sign out of this. We're going to carve a sign. So again, we need a solid piece of wood. And there's some things that I already did to prepare it for the glue up. First of all, I got a really sharp blade on my table saw and I cut a really nice edge on both sides. Now, a purist would tell you that you should do that on a joiner, but you can do it on the table saw. Just make sure you have a nice sharp blade. Also, I already cut these to length and they're about 37 inches long, and I'm gonna end up with about 28 inches of width. I've left a little extra on the side so that I can trim it off if I want to. I got quite a variation in my thickness. So I'm gonna take most of these pieces and I'm gonna run them through my little planer to get them closer to what I want it to be. One thing about using the planer, if you do this ahead of time or afterwards, doesn't matter. If you're using recycled wood, don't use the planer as a cleaner. Make sure that it's there's no foreign material, grit and grime, dirt, stuff like that is gonna dull the knives on your planer. So the purpose of the planer is to reduce the thickness of the material, not to clean off the material. This beautiful old redwood really looks good after it's planed off. It's about 300 years old, this tree, so kind of cool that we got a hold of it. Now, this isn't a great example of what I wanted to show you here, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. The grain on this is going like this. Grain of this is going kind of straight through. This is kind of straight through. That's straight through. That's kind of curving that way. Because it's straight through, I can pretty much put these in any position. But if I had a lot of cup like this one does, then I would want to flip them back and forth so that the cup is going in alternate directions. It's going to minimize the amount that this stuff will warp in any one direction. So to more clearly show you what I'm trying to do here, you're never going to have a situation that's exactly like this. But if I had 4 planks of wood and the grain of the wood is going this way and that way and that way and that way, that would be the way to glue it up. You would want to alternate the direction of those annular rings. And that way, if there is any tendency to warp, it will minimize that tendency to warp, or they'll contradict each other and makes the piece of wood stronger. Never gonna look exactly like that, but that's the idea. So to get ready for the process here, I've got my boards lined up. I've got 5 clamps, bar clamps. I prefer these kind like this because I can put a little more pressure, a pipe clamp, and put a little more pressure on the wood with it with these things. And I got myself some Titebond 3 brown aliphatic resin glue. This is the kind of glue that I like to use because it dries darker and you don't see a glue line. Now, on where it's clamped, I could put some little pieces of wood to protect the edge of the wood, but I know that I'm going to trim this off, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to try to glue this thing up at once. If it was a problem, if there was a lot of warpage in some of these pieces of wood, then I could glue up a couple at a time and make it a 2-day process. But this wood is pretty flat. I think I'm going to be able to glue everything up at once. I'm going to go ahead and mark across my wood like this so I don't lose the order of the wood. or the order that the pieces are in. I could also number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if I wanted to, but the marks are going to work fine for me. I'm putting glue on both edges and spreading it out with my finger. Now they do make nice little brushes for this, and you can go buy one if you like, but actually finger works pretty well. As I do this glue up, I'm tightening my clamps from one side to the other. In this case, from right to left. I'm also alternating the position of the clamps, top and bottom. And that way, if there's any tendency for that to bend as I clamp it, it'll bend in both directions, or it'll bend up and down, or it won't bend at all. Now, as I tighten these clamps, I just apply a moderate amount of pressure, and then I come back and give it a final tightening. I like to see that glue ooze out evenly along the joint. Gonna wipe some of this excess glue off with a damp paper towel or a rag, but I don't want to overdo it with the water because it will kind of creep into the joint and weaken it a little bit. One thing that you have to deal with when you're doing a glue up like this is, especially on the bottom side, the clamps will sometimes leave little marks on the bottom. You can do some things to minimize that. You can put some wax paper down there if you want to. That will keep the board cleaner. In this case, I know that I'm going to be running this whole plank through a big sander, so I'm not really worried about it. And it's not always that easy. Sometimes you have to do some things to line up the ends. You can use clamps on the ends to hold the little points together. Or you can do it in sections, and you do it in sections, then you have less to deal with. But we got lucky this time. One big plank out of 5 pieces. So we got this thing all clamped up, left it to dry overnight. Should be ready to unclamp. Don't really need to leave it clamped up for a full day, but so they say, but it just makes me feel better if I let it dry overnight. So I take the clamps on it, get myself a nice wide board. I'm gonna take this glue scraper and scrape it off a little bit. Still got some goo on the back where the glue dried up. And then I'm gonna go after it with my sander a little bit, just so I can see what it looks like. Eventually, I'm gonna take this down to a place that has a big drum sander. I'm gonna have it sanded off that way, because I need it to be nice and flat to do my carving. I'm gonna go ahead and cut off this end that's just hanging out here ragged with my little battery-powered circular saw. So the theory is that the glue is stronger than the wood. So if that's true, if I take and break this, or try to break it like this, it should not break there or there. Let's see if the theory holds true. Well, it broke close to the joint, but not on the joint. So I don't think that's really a good sign. Maybe the theory is not always true. My theory is the glue is strong enough. You don't need to use biscuits or anything like that. I'm down here at one of my favorite local places, Decorative Woods. They're gonna sand that board off for me, make it nice and flat so I can carve it properly. Well, here that plank is all sanded up and ready to be used. It looks beautiful. Cool thing about this is you can't just go out and cut down a 300-year-old tree anymore. It's illegal and probably not a good thing. And we were really lucky to to get a hold of this because it really looks nice. Cost a little bit more than I thought it would to have it sanded. It cost $65, which seems like an awful lot. I don't know, maybe that's a going rate. I haven't had it done for a while, but it looks beautiful anyway. Want to leave you today with this proverb that says, in all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Maybe that means I should have sanded it myself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.